Innovate. Enable.
The most suitable way to describe the present times could be the Great Reset. Every aspect of our life, business, as well as the overall paradigm has gone through a big change. Now, to discuss what really stands to change post this era is over and also crystal gaze into how the future may look, I have with me two luminaries joining us on the Thought League, KV Kamath and Cyril Shroff. Gentlemen, so good to have you on the Thought League. Now, starting with you, KV Kamath, it all begins with the mind. So what is the kind of mindset change do you think that has come about in these COVID times, and what is your reflection for future post this change?
I'll capture it in one phrase and then expand on it. I would say that mindset change now happens in a blink of an eye. And if I were to connect this up, if you look at, let's say, the steam engine, and then electricity, and then the computer, and then the internet, and look at how long it took for each one to gain momentum. And then came Moore's law, where you said that computing power would go at a square every 2 years, mind you. That was great. And today, suddenly, mid-March, or the third week of March, in a blink, things change. And everybody reset their own minds, whether it was at a personal level or at a corporate level. And so I would think that what defines this reset, as we will keep talking, is the speed at which it has happened, the speed at which it has enveloped us, and at the speed at which we have responded in a positive manner.
Of course, agility, alacrity, very, very important. But Cyril Shroff, of course, all of this is centered around livelihood and the employment as well as job creation. What do you think are the structural reforms that are really required by our society as the entire social structure is set for a huge change as well?
So just to build on what Mr. Kamath said, I think this crisis is a great opportunity to change in a very fundamental way. And rightly so, it starts in the mind. And this holds good both in the public as well as the private space. And there's an opportunity to deeply re-engineer all rules of engagement, policy, and the social contract itself, which is what you're referring to. And I think the right way of looking at it is to look at it as some sort of liberalization 2.0. Liberalization 1.0 was about reversing that old mindset of if it's not permitted, it must be prohibited, into if it's not prohibited, it must be permitted. So what's the new idea now? I think the effect of the new idea is basically about building the entire sort of engagement model around trust. Look at remote working. All my employees and all the employees of many organizations are working from home. I have no idea what they're doing. I trust them. I think if you look forward in terms of what would be the new operating model and the new social contract, it's already happened, but I think we need to carry it to another level in terms of the kind of policies and laws that we evolve, which has to be based upon trust. And I think that's going to be the big change. And then it trickles down into various things: trust in the market systems, trust in the regulatory and policy framework, trust in financial markets, trust in ethical technology, and things like that. So the new social contract and the new way of going forward, I think, is based on trust and is liberalization 2.0 as a philosophy around which we should build. And I think technology and the art of being together yet apart, I think, is the new tomorrow.
All right, so you have set the stage for the entire discussion, but let me draw upon the long experience that Mr. KV Kamath has had in the financial services sector. And you spoke about trust, Cyril Shroff, and a large part of trust really emanates from the financial sector health. Given the present condition, a lot of things are very uncertain. KV Kamath, help us reflect on what lies ahead given the present situation that you're seeing.
Yeah, actually, this is a connect between the macro and the micro. A lot will depend on the macro. Just to put it in context, when the lockdown happened and when We knew the second lockdown, that it's going to be prolonged. We thought that things were going to be very dire. There were dire numbers in terms of contraction of growth, negative teens, and the dire numbers in terms of deficit, the fiscal deficit, double digit. From then to now, things have changed. I'm putting it in context because at that point in time, if you had asked me this question, my answer would have been different. At this point in time, my answer will be different. At this point in time, the latest I have is the financial stability report that the Reserve Bank has put out. And that actually makes it clear that things are not as bad as what one might have thought in March. And I think that then from the macro percolates down to the micro, that is the lending institutions. And in that, I think one key number that I found was that the fiscal deficit probably is going to be much better than what we had thought of. Given that, and more interestingly, looking at high frequency numbers, they're coming out positive. You start with electricity offtake, whether it is movement of goods, coal, logistics, everything is coming back faster than we thought. Then you go to manufacturing, things are happening at a faster nick than what we thought of. The reason I'm stressing this is, and of course, I've been watching this morning the corporate numbers. They're coming out better than we thought of by and large. All this augurs well for balance sheets of banks. That's the point that I'm trying to make. So I think what we expected as a worst case might not happen. Things will probably have a much, I would say, softer landing than what could have been. I want to expand on this for one more moment.
Sure.
If you look at the sectors that are in pain, only a few, but they're critical. We need to see that we address those through the banking system and or through other policy measures, as Cyril rightly mentioned. We will have to address them appropriately. But through the steps that the government already took, a large part of the pain has been or is getting elevated even as we speak. And I think we are blessed that we had certain sectors performing well from day one. Agriculture, for example. Otherwise, we would have had a big challenge in addition to this challenge that we have. So we will be left with a few sectors which will have pain, and that pain will percolate into the banking sector. I think for that, both the government and the central bank have indicated that they are ready with the steps, and we will see how these work out. For the moment, yes, financial institutions who are lenders might require capital. The private entities are already on way to raise that capital. I'm sure in course of time, how to get the capital into other institutions will be worked out by the government. So I'm not as negative as I could have been or would have been 4 months back. Today, I think this is a doable thing.
Coming to Cyril Shroff, now Cyril Shroff, what needs to be done to really preserve the liquidity in the country, because that is going to be paramount for our financial health as well, so that flight of liquidity doesn't take place in the global scenario? And also, do you think India has a chance to really become the financial capital of Asia at this time?
Well, absolutely. And I think we're sort of moving a little bit into the sort of capital markets and global markets. So I think India is very much poised to claim its place as a leading Asian financial center. There are already conversations that are happening on direct listing and fungibility of Indian securities, potentially at some stage a dual listing for corporations above a particular size. But these are complex issues. Some of these will be linked with the entire issue of full capital account convertibility. But we have a regulatory sandbox that is already in place just now, the GIFT City and the formation of the IFSCA. I think these are experiments which will allow us to, start the journey on becoming a global financial center. And I think we are very well positioned for that. I think there are headwinds for China and Hong Kong for geopolitical reasons. And India can really make a bid for being one of the top Asian financial centers as well. So I'm quite hopeful, because we also have a number of enterprises in India which can benefit from this.
Right. And Cyril Shroff, what about infrastructure financing? Do you have any ideas on that particular front?
Yes. So, whilst the digital may be the flavor of the season, I think we're still going to need roads and airports and all of that. So, infrastructure in the public private partnership, I think, is still going to be required no matter what. And that's whilst it's a separate long topic, I think three or four things need to be done. I think we need to reimagine our concession agreements. They are very one-sided and they need to be much fairer. We need to imagine sector regulation so that they can have clear rules as well as a fairer competition and a real competition law framework. We need superior dispute resolution. So when you have disputes on, for example, tariff or service, it takes years and years to resolve, and the process is the punishment there. And by the time you sort of get to the other end of it, it's quite pointless. And lastly, I think there will be a resetting of the balance between borrower and lender in terms of how financing will be done, so that we can move to a true PPP based model where there could be real limited recourse financing to the income of the asset. So these are topics for another day, but I can see infrastructure finance being fully reimagined.
All right, so this was about the big reset on the finance bit, but there are many other aspects which are set for a big reset right now in the present times. We'll discuss that on the Thought League with KV Kamath and Cyril Shroff after a very short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the Thought Leak, and KV Kamath as well as Cyril Shroff are really crystal gazing on what really lies ahead of us after the Great Reset. Now, coming to you, KV Kamath, of course, digital adoption is something that we have seen has really taken place with great speed in the present times. How do you think it's going to be a game changer going forward?
Probably it will. The impact of the digital changes that are happening around us is probably the biggest impact that we will have faced in our lifetimes. We thought at each stage of technology evolution that, oh, this is it. But this one, particularly because it has happened at the pace, I used the phrase earlier, in the blink of an eye, it has happened. More importantly, the adoption also has happened in the blink of an eye, whether it is the housewife or whether it's the corporate. So I think it is going to impact every single thing that we do. And I heard a phrase the other day, which I think captures it very aptly. We are into a digital super cycle, as it were, in terms of things we would otherwise not have thought of.
All right. So digital super cycle, that's a new term that you have really coined, KV Kamath. So yes, transformation is happening and possibilities are immense. But Cyril Shroff, what are the prerequisites for a smooth transition?
Absolutely. And I completely share Mr. Kamath's optimism. And I believe that that's exactly how the next 20-25 years are going to evolve, because the genie is out of the bottle and it's going to sort of build. But we have to be careful over here because whilst you go forward, I think to keep it at a high level, I think we need the three prerequisites to making sure that this digital revolution doesn't become Orwellian. I think first, we need to have clear data privacy and data integrity laws, both for personal and non-personal data. And we are already on that path, but I think it needs to now come into operation quickly. The second, I think we need to have clear structures such as data trusts and others where you can harvest large data on an anonymized basis and create sort of economic value out of it. And the third, I think we need to think about ethical design in technology. And that is going to happen both by kind of adoption and kind of self-actualization by the technology industry, as well as could be partly driven by regulation as well. So long as you have ethics built into technology as well, and you have where the rights of a private citizen are protected, I think this is a prerequisite. Otherwise, it could lead to some bad outcomes as well. But my view is that all of that will happen. I think it's also important to have a clear imagination of transparency and accountability. So, and there are possibilities and opportunities here. For example, access to justice has always been a very big issue in India as well. I think there are opportunities for using technology and online dispute resolution and for all public services as well. So, so long as we can create the right policy and institutional safeguards, this revolution cannot be stopped.
All right, regulations, taxation policies, all these are extremely important frameworks to come to a good digital setup. But KV Kamath, you spent a lot of time in China in your previous role. Now help us understand, can India really take advantage of the changing global mindset and the trade setup?
Indeed, India can. Not only because there are this shifting winds, as it were. I believe India can. Again, I stress what Honorable Prime Minister is saying. Atmanirbhar. We have to, fully fall in line with this for a different reason. We are a market by itself. We are a large country. We can absorb technology. We have the skill sets. We have the people, who are skilled, who are technically qualified to do all these things, to absorb technology, to deploy technology, and to grow. And we have a large market. If I say that the next 25 years we have things to do, I think we are our own market. And when we become our own market, I think then we start exporting. I would look at it that way, that we get the wheel spinning in the domestic context. We build things at quality, at cost, better than anybody else, at speed. We will become a part of that global cycle very, very easily, because the sheer size of the domestic market gives us opportunities which not many countries could have.
Right, and government, of course, has pushed the pedal on Atmanirbhar Bharat. But Cyril Shroff, what else needs to be done for its right execution then?
So I think the global winds are in India's favor, and we are underestimating our soft power. I think in addition to everything that Mr. Kamath said, I think there are a couple of other themes which could be used at a kind of a global level. I think we need to reimagine multilateral institutions, because whilst all of what we said is true, I think there is an element of deglobalization that is happening, and I think the longer term relevancy of some of the global institutions, which were some of the Bretton Woods institutions or organizations like that, are not being seen as truly representative of the world population, which is why you have institutions like the NDB or the AIB having been formed. So I think what I do envisage in the next 10 years is India's role in terms of both regional as well as global multilateral institutions will go up, and that is going to be a big reset, and I think we are headed that way. I can see some of the trade agreements being reimagined as well. So I think, whilst WTO is a bit lumpy, I think we will see more regional trade agreements, and that will be good for India as well. And India might need a permanent place in the Security Council as well. So on the global theme, I think these are some big topics for India to pick up, and I can see the government is very focused on that. On Atmanirbhar, I think whilst I agree with what Kamath Sahib said, we just have to be careful that we don't do it with the old mindset of the best way to be Atmanirbhar is to increase the tariff duties and put restrictions. It should be an efficiency-based Atmanirbhar rather than a regulation-based Atmanirbhar. So that I think that we need to be careful that we don't become protectionist in the old-fashioned sort of way, but we are becoming more self-reliant in a global sort of way.
Right, so great thoughts there, but KV Kamath, I want to understand one aspect. While we are all very euphoric about the big changes, how the digital adoption can really unleash the potential of microeconomies and everything else, but I want to question you on the stickiness of the changes that have been brought about because of a temporary situation. What do you think about that?
I think a very, very good question. If we look at the corporate world, we need to look at both. I always like to look at the individual and the corporate world. First, the corporate world. The corporate world does everything for profit, and that's one of the reasons why things are done for profit. Now, they have seen that this change, which has been brought about due to this event, has some very positive outcomes. And those outcomes flow into profitability. So I don't think there's going to be a trade-off between those gains and the cost of those gains in terms of service or whatever. And there will be an effort to improve, those shortfalls that might have been there because of this change, but try to preserve the profit. So I think this is going to be sticky.
Right, and it's our opportunity now to optimize on these big changes that have been brought about at these times. So Cyril Shroff, final word to you. You spoke about the liberalization 2.0 dream. Would you like to articulate that to end the show with?
Sure. Just sort of to be a little ahead of the curve on the liberalization 2.0. I go back to the philosophy of trust-based systems with just 3 points. First, let's celebrate entrepreneurship and ethical wealth creation. And policy should address the real fears of industry and not just low-hanging fruit. Second, I think we should take in our stride the freedom to fail. I think it's very important for encouraging innovation. And the third, I think we need to have a surgical strike on all the regulatory cholesterol and the thousands of approvals that are required for anything. If I think we do these 3 things, we will truly have liberalization 2.0 built on trust.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. KV Kamath as well as Cyril Shroff for joining us on the Thought League. So some great ideas really coming in from both the guests on the show. But I would also say that for India to really leapfrog into the new era and capitalize on the opportunities that have been brought about in this adverse atmosphere, well, probably alacrity and agility is the need of the hour. Thanks so much for tuning in on the Thought League.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.